Good morning. Good morning, Instagram. Good morning, Facebook. I'm just still kind of waking up, so excuse the sleepy face and the sleepy voice. I wanted to hop on. I'm about to head out to yoga. Super excited to go lay down in a hot room. But I thought I would jump on and do day 2 of the 7 days of self-mastery right now because I woke up and I was already thinking about it. So let's dive right in. So if you didn't catch my live yesterday, I was on both Instagram and Facebook, and I was kind of hit by this inspiration the other day. What's up, V? Excuse me. And laying in bed the other night, and I was like, I really want to boil down what are the basic building blocks of self-mastery, of personal development. And I kept thinking about it, and I ended up dividing it in my head into 7 different main components. And so I wanted to talk about one each day for 7 days, and it ended up being the last 7 days of February. And I love that kind of organization. So yesterday we talked about day 1, which was, what's up, Amara? And good morning to you, V. Yesterday we talked about the power of identity. So basically who you are and who you think you are. And I went on for like 30 minutes. So go check out that video. I won't say too much more, but really the point was that the foundation of everything is knowing who you are, because if you don't know who you are, it's hard to have alignment. It's hard to create a life that's an expression of who you are and what's most important to you, and what you give a shit about and what you stand for if you don't know what any of those things are. And so many of us, we spend our whole lives like creating these identities for ourselves pretty much unconsciously based on external factors like pressure from parents or family or friends or peers or society or whatever it is. And so we do, like decades of, or we don't do, but we are conditioned over decades from outside sources, and that kind of forms who we are. And my whole thing is like, let's actually dig down and figure out who you really are on the inside and what makes you tick, because each one of us is so completely unique and different and brilliant in our own ways. And yet here we are, we just sort of naturally conform to whatever we're around, and we're so influenced by all these other things all around us. So anyway, so yesterday was all about the power of identity and really truly coming back. I was talking about it as like coming back home to yourself and being in relationship with yourself. That to me is like the foundation of self-mastery, of personal development, of self-development. And so if you think about it, it's kind of like maybe a pyramid, and at the very bottom you have this foundation of who you are. So then to me, the natural next step after you've and by the way, this isn't like a linear path, right? This is all of these different building blocks kind of can be happening simultaneously in parallel and in like a never-ending cycle, right? So however, if the main foundation is knowing who you are and really like peeling apart the layers of who you thought you were, getting back down to who you really are at your core, like your core identity, your values, your passions, your purpose, all of that, and also starting to look at who you want to become, like what's next for you, what's the next level of you, then to me, after the work around identity, then the next piece becomes figuring out what you want, right? So day 2 today is all about knowing what you want. And you guys, it's crazy, right? What's up, guys? What's Catherine, Ian, Mandeep, Sarah, Emily, Jamie? Thank you for tuning in. It's crazy how much we don't know what we want, right? We think that's such a simple question, and you think, well, like a 2-year-old knows what it wants, right? Like, I want this. And yet, also thanks to all the conditioning and just the influences and just living in the modern world, we're bombarded by all of these pressures and all this messaging telling us not only who we're supposed to be, who we're supposed to marry, how we're supposed to live, what kind of job we're supposed to have, what we're supposed to look like, all of that, but we're also bombarded by the same kind of conditioning telling us what we're supposed to want. You're supposed to want this kind of lifestyle, this kind of car, this kind of house, this kind of travel, this kind of family, this kind of community, these kinds of whatever, right? So it's like most of us, and I see this over and over and over again in clients of all ages, and especially a lot of really, really successful people whose lives on paper look great. Like they look like they're crushing it, right? And they should be totally happy. But what's crazy is they've built these lives for themselves that are not based on who they are and what they want, but they're based on who they thought they were supposed to be and what they thought they were supposed to want. It's like, for a lot of people, it ends up being this, American dream kind of thing where you're like, well, I got the good education, I got a good job, I, am climbing the corporate ladder, I'm working in a really stable 9 to 5. I bought the house with a picket fence and got the dog and got married and 2.5 kids or whatever it is. And by the way, none of those things are bad or wrong. Those things are amazing if that's what you want, right? The only thing is not everybody wants those things, and maybe not in that order. And yet a lot of messages come through where we're kind of taught to believe that if we don't want those things and if we don't go after those kind of approved things, which can look different, you know, in your community or your culture or wherever you're from, but whatever those things were for you, then it's like we're taught that if we don't want those things, something's wrong with you. You don't want kids, what's wrong with you? You don't want to work a stable 9 to 5 job, what's wrong with you? You know, so people like who are creatives or artists or aspiring entrepreneurs or, you know, just want to be a stay-at-home parent or whatever it is, we get all these messages that like, what's wrong with you? Anyway, the point is so many of us, we get to these places in our lives, 30s, 40s, 50s, and we're like, shit, I don't actually know what I want. And that's one of the fascinating things I find as I'm working with people is like actually coming down to figuring out what you really want turns out to be this massive like archaeology project, right? We are totally excavating, getting rid of, just like yesterday we talked about getting rid of layers and like peeling back the onion and letting go of layers of conditioning of who you thought you were supposed to be. It's the same thing with desire, goals, dreams, right? It's like trying to figure out, okay, all these things that I thought I wanted that I've been pursuing for the last 5, 10, 15 years, I don't actually want these things. This is what I just thought that I wanted based on what my parents told me or based on what my friends were doing or based on whatever else. And so once you start to really connect down back to who you are and come home to yourself, then you can also really start to look at, well, what do I really want? And it's so cool to watch, right? This is one of the beautiful things I get to experience in my line of work is I get to watch people like really dig deep and look at, you know, not just like what goals am I working on? And don't get me wrong, goals are great. I love working with people on their goals, but I also feel like the goals, the way that they're sort of pitched to us in our culture and our society are like, you know, smart goals and, you know, be responsible and plan ahead and and that's all great. And I don't think that we give ourselves permission to dream. And I don't think we give ourselves permission to dream nearly big enough, right? Most of us have this very, very limited view of like what's possible and what's responsible and what's feasible. And, you know, your goals should be like adulting, you know? And so very few of us, even though we may maybe make goals, those goals are not necessarily an expression of who you are. Those goals are not necessarily the things that like light you up with so much passion and so much inspiration, right? So what I think is really important is to not only like start to let go of the goals that, or the things that you thought you were supposed to want, which can be really hard, you know, so it's like letting go of that first. And then you're starting to give yourself permission to really dream and to acknowledge your desires. And I mean, desires meaning anything and everything, right? And once you start to get kind of past that like first little level where you're like, ooh, I get to actually be honest about what I desire, then you can start to move on to like, well, what if anything was possible? What if I'm limitless? What, you know, and then you start to dream bigger and bigger. And it's almost as if you take your brain and you expand it. And then you start to give yourself permission to want things that are even bigger than you never would have even given yourself permission to think about or to look at before. I often see, like, let's say I'm working with somebody for 6 months and somewhere towards the beginning, we start looking at their goals and dreams and they come up with this, you know, set of things that they really want in their life, the life they want to create. And they're really excited about it. They're motivated. And then like 2 or 3 months later, they look back at it and they go, oh, that's cute. Like, this is so basic. Now I can see that these are all things I can absolutely have, be, do, and have. I want to think way bigger. And then it's like they go deeper and they think bigger and they go deeper and they think bigger. And the more we go deep and the more we think big, the more we start to really connect down to the things that actually light us up. Like it's as if I see people who are, you know, successful people whose lights have been dimmed. Like you look in their eyes and they're fine, they're good, but they're not lit up. And then as they start to give themselves permission to dream and really dig in and like say the things out loud that maybe they haven't even dared to say to themselves, it's like a light goes on. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in how they carry themselves. It's really amazing to watch. So it's like goals, dreams, desires, the tangible stuff, the intangible stuff. You know, a lot of us think about what we want and we think about these really material things, or we think about achievements. Like, you know, our society's all about achieving and performing and, you know, you have to be like successful to be happy. And that's all fine and good. And there's a lot of ways where like so much of life is about how we're feeling, not necessarily what we're doing or what we have. although the doing and the having is great too, but it's like, how do you actually want to feel? And how many of us ever really sit down and take the time to think about that? How do we want to feel? How do I want to feel? Like for me, 3 of my main core desired feelings are to feel alive, awake, and free. Like, what does that mean? To feel alive, to feel awake, and to feel free. That doesn't have to do with any material belonging necessarily or something that I'm doing. It's an experience in my body. And it's a way that I need to show up as a human, and it's a way that I need to be living my life in order to feel alive and awake and free. So super important to know what you want. If you have no idea, that's totally okay. It's never too late to start. I've worked with clients in their 40s, 50s, 60s who are like just starting to try to figure it out for the first time or really get honest with themselves, right? So I always think it's worth it to get courageous enough to ask yourself what you really want. And then it's like, okay, well, how? Okay, so let's say I don't know what I want and I do want to figure it out. How do I actually do that? What do you think? Let's take a sip from the cup. What do you think about it? Like, how do you actually figure out what you want, right? It seems like such a basic thing. Shouldn't I just know that? But so many of us, we don't, because we have all these layers of conditioning on top of our desires. So it's like, for one, I think we need to actually take time to reflect, sit down, journal it out, actually give yourself the space, which for a lot of us in our go, 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 busy, busy, busy lives, we don't have time to just think. So giving yourself the space, the time to actually reflect helps if you have someone asking you the hard questions, or someone to talk to, or someone to help kind of pull it out of you, right? Which it can be a friend, it can be a family member, accountability buddy, whatever, coach, mentor, and then keep coming back to it, right? It takes a little bit of work because you may discover that there are like a couple initial layers of desires, but then it's when you go deeper that you get down to the really juicy stuff. So that's why I think it's so important to visit and revisit and keep revisiting what it is that you actually really want and just go deeper and deeper. So, oh, and side note, I also believe that it's really important that you believe that you're worthy of your desires. That's a huge hiccup that I see for a lot of folks. Hey, Ted, is that maybe they know what they want and they're taking action and they're going toward it, but they don't actually believe that they can have it. And so they're constantly sabotaging themselves. They get halfway there and then they sabotage. They get halfway there and then they sabotage. So super important to know what you want. Super important to also work on believing that you can have it, believing that you are worthy. And, it can take time to figure it out. So please give yourself permission to dream, to have desires, to acknowledge them. Like, you honoring your desires and chasing your goals and dreams, no matter where you're at in your life, no matter what age you are, is not only a gift to yourself, it's a gift to all your people, like all the people in your world, and it's a gift to the world, I think. The more people who are connected to their desires and chasing them and like creating these lives they love because they know what they want and not lights them up, it's going to make the whole world a better place. That's my belief. So please give yourself permission to dream, desire. Please do the work. Please take the time, give yourself space to reflect. And of course, if you want guidance with that, this is one of my favorite things to do, is to help people figure out what they want. Like, honestly, if I could boil the entire work of coaching or what I do down to one question, it would be asking people what they want over and over and over, and actually getting them to the answers, which is amazing. So if you want guidance, hit me up. Remember that my mastermind is still open and Unleashed. It's my year 1 mastermind. It's kind of like an amazing introduction to all things personal development. It's everything I've studied and learned over the last 20 years that I wished I had known when I was younger. And I would be so honored to teach you all of those things for the entire year of 2019. We are up and running. We're going. It's an amazing group of women. They're totally badass. Lots of breakthroughs happening already. And I would love for you to join us. If you're interested, I'll drop the link below, and just feel free to ask me any questions, send me a PM if you're interested. Or if you know any women who might be interested in this kind of work, getting really clear on who they are and what they want and moving toward it and up-leveling their lives in a huge way in 2019, please send them my way. So there's 6 days left, or 5 days left, I guess 5 days left after today. Any questions, hit me up. Thank you for listening. I'm going to run off to yoga. I'm already almost late because I love chatting with you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Bye. I'm trying to turn off